All yours, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, host, Mr. Thompson. We're going to call this meeting of the Madaket Area Plan Work Group to order at this time. And we're going to see about establishing a quorum if we have 6 people. Let's see. Lars Soderberg.
Here.
Wesley Forbes.
Here.
Michael Maynard.
Here.
Ethan Devine is not here. Tom Erickson. Nope. I'm here. Peter Haffenreffer.
Here.
JP Hernandez. Nope. Joe Topham.
Present.
Okay. And our ad hoc people, Giselle, Cormac Collier, Emily Molden, Emily's out of town. Kitty Pockman from Linda Loring Foundation said she would be joining us in the middle of our meeting. She's got another meeting for Linda Loring going. So let's call it a quorum and we'll have our official meeting. And the required short version of the Zoom meeting authorization is good afternoon. Welcome to the Madaket Area Plan Work Group meeting. This open meeting of the Madaket Area Plan Work Group is being conducted in a hybrid format. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the town's YouTube channel. I have already called roll and we've established that there is a forum, and during the meeting, if we have any votes, I will be calling on you folks to declare your votes. And everything will be done that way on the voting. Zoom participants are asked to identify themselves. Your name will be noted on the screen under your Zoom connection. Except for the travel committee, number 3, that's our host, Mr. Topham. For public comment, all Zoom participants are asked to mute their device unless addressing the committee. For public comment, after any member has spoken, the chair may afford public comment to members of the public. Members of the public making comments are to announce their name and any affiliation. In addition to that, there was an item in the agenda for comments from the public for items that are not on the agenda. And the agenda today is the public comments from members of the public, if there are any. And then we're going to go into, we would go normally into approval of minutes. However, the last official meeting we had was in 9 August. And those minutes were approved, thank you, Leslie Forbes, and posted. Today, we're going to be discussing Chapter 8 of the Madaket Area Plan, which is circulation and transportation. And we're very fortunate to have Mike Burns, Nantucket's Transportation Program Manager. He's affiliated with the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Council. And he has already distributed a slide pack of 8 slides, which I also forwarded to you. And Mike is going to try to work us through his slide presentation and discuss the items on the slide. And Joe, I believe you can screen share if Mike wants to do that. So I think, Mike, I'd like to turn it over to you. Well, that's perfect.
There you go, Mike. You're muted, Mike.
Mike, you have to unmute. There you are.
Sorry. This is my first virtual meeting, so apologies for that. I'm joking. As you know, the first iteration of the Madaket area plan had 3 recommendations for transportation. One for extension of the NRTA service, the hours of operation, and extending the season of NRTA operations, preservation of some of the dirt roads, public dirt roads that are in the area, and the third recommendation was to the alternative access routes through Moorns Landing and Eel Point Road as for emergency access. So I tried to put together some slides of maybe some other options that might be of interest to the group to consider for the circulation element. Again, the first slide just talks about the public transportation that was previously suggested. Currently, right now, Madaket route service is seasonal, operates 30 minutes in the summertime, and then in the shoulder season has a 1 hour headway in frequency. So the suggestion was to extend that hours of operations that currently end at about 11:30, extend those to midnight, and increase the frequency of the shoulder season, which is currently 30 minutes. So I'm assuming those are still rather supported by the work group. There are some elements about coastal resiliency. I'm not sure if this group has discussed those at all, but I can walk through a couple of different points. I guess the 2 areas that would really affect Madaket that are included in the coastal resiliency plan, I'm assuming a lot of you are at least familiar that there is a coastal resiliency plan for Madaket. First is up at the Long Pond area, the bridge is there, and then at the Ames Avenue Bridge. So the first location, the North Head Long Pond, the recommendation there because of projected sea level rise. I believe the plan notes by 2070, which is 50 years from now, 45 years from now. That bridge there would be under like 6 inches of water or something like this. Anyway, so the recommendation and the plan was to elevate Madaket Road through this area, and then the next area was the Ames Avenue Bridge or Middle East Bridge, and the near-term recommendation was to, I guess, do some soft structure like dune restoration projects and providing some dunes to help protect the bridge and to actually maintain and I believe the bridge study that was done in this area was to replace the bridge eventually, but right now I believe the town's pursuing just maintenance of that which would extend the life 25 years for that bridge there. And this is the near term, of course, with the coastal erosion and the projections to kind of affect the end of Madaket Road and Ames Avenue. There's a strategy to, I guess, a retreat strategy. Retreat meaning that we have to find another alignment, perhaps another location for the bridge and for Ames Avenue. That really hasn't been explored very much, other than staff is kind of coordinating with some areas to kind of look at some alignment options, but nothing's really been finalized just yet. So I'm not sure if this work group plans on making a recommendation for any recommendations beyond the near-term strategy, whether to adhere to the retreat strategy or if there was some preservation, some appetite to preserve those corridors with some more aggressive protection strategies. The Massasoit Bridge has been recommended to be replaced or have some work done for a while. I guess the current study done by TEC had recommended some improvements to the approach roads to the bridge with some improved signage and some surface treatments, and then some additional improvements to the bridge itself to rehab that. There was an option of whether to cantilever a sidewalk along the west side of this bridge or not. So I'm not sure if this area plan would actually speak to that and perhaps make a recommendation if there should be some pedestrian accommodation, bike and pedestrian accommodation to the bridge by adding that cantilevered option. But this is another project that's, again, it's been evaluated through engineering studies, just I don't believe the actual design and the construction or reconstruction of the bridge has really advanced since the useful life is intended to be another 25 years. And just talking about the alternative access route, I did try to highlight the Warren's Landing and the Eel Point route as an alternative in case this red area of Madaket Road becomes impassable, and this, I guess, number 4 there, if the bridge there becomes impassable, that we need to find another route. I've kind of drawn in some other alternatives using Proprietor's Way and Bartlett Farm Road as one alternative, especially for the residents along the coast there, in case Massasoit Bridge becomes impassable. A strategy really needs to be found if, say, the Ames Avenue Bridge becomes impassable. Perhaps there's is it the F Street Pier, some kind of ferry service or something like this can be used as emergency access if that bridge is no longer useful. But those are some other options, I guess, to consider that perhaps this area plan update can address. The other topics that I just kind of bullet pointed listing, just me just trying to come up with ideas that this plan could talk to. If there's any recommendation to be made about the yard sale program and dealing with paper roads, roads that are on on a plan but haven't been actually physically built. They're just on paper right now. Is there an appetite for sidewalks in any particular areas for pedestrian accommodation? There's the topic of bike path safety that that became kind of an issue this past summer, and DPW's done some striping and working with some property owners to cut back some vegetation to improve sight distances to improve safety along the Madaket bike path. But if there's other ideas or other areas that need to be addressed, or some investment that needs to be made in actually reconstructing and realigning the bike path in some areas, or doing some kind of other improvement to improve safety, kind of curious if this area plan update would do that. Parking is obviously an issue. I guess it's a blessing and a sin that you have beautiful sunsets out there. A lot of people like to enjoy that, and I'm sure that stresses out the parking supply. So if there's a strategy for how to manage that you'd like to speak to, or just make a general recommendation to improve the on-street parking situation, or improving lots, the size of lots, that's a topic. Encroachments, especially along Washington Avenue, I think has been kind of a topic in recent years. If there's any encroachment issues that the area plan would recommend for specific areas that needed to be addressed. And then there's the topic of charging stations. If there's any electric vehicles, are there opportunities to charge electric vehicles out in Madaket? And if not, are there some preferred locations of where to locate those? And so I'll stop there, Bruce. I mean, that took just a less than 10 minutes to kind of run through, and I thought I'd just leave it up to the group to maybe ask about any of those particular topics that I've highlighted on the slides, or I'm happy to just to be in listening mode and kind of listen to you all kind of explore each of these topics. So I'll just stop there and ask if there's any questions.
Okay, if anyone I have several topics I'd like to mention, but let's hear from the group if anybody has any. Kitty has her hand up, so is she unmuted?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Great. I'm sorry I was late to the meeting, but I obviously got here for the specific question that I had. And I noticed, talking about the alternative routes, if something happens and Madaket Road becomes impassable, that slide, thank you, Mike. As I'm sure everyone is aware, Eel Point Road is a private road, and it is maintained by the neighbors and abutters, and parts of it are not in really good shape. I don't know if the town has any thoughts on how that can be improved without paving it, because I know the neighbors don't want it paved, or if they have ever considered taking the road. There are just some concerns that I've heard from the neighbors along the road. So I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are there, Mike.
And which road was this again? I'm sorry, I think you said Madaket Road?
Eel Point Road. So if
Eel Point
Madaket
Road.
Road becomes impassable and an alternative route is Eel Point Road. Eel Point Road is a dirt road and not in the greatest condition. The neighbors all contribute to repairing it several times a year, but there are several places that are almost impassable.
Well, like I said, the existing Madaket area plan does suggest that that route be used or developed for alternative access. I'm not sure if there's been any work done beyond that point. So if that's still like an existing recommendation you would have, I think that we need to kind of explore, see what the improvement options are. It's not, like you said, if it's a private road, the town has no control over that. I'm sure, just for in emergencies, that could definitely be taken advantage of and used as a corridor. But as far as maintenance and investing in it, perhaps that would be the recommendation you might make, is to consider it be public. Or I'd almost throw it back to you as like, is that the desire to have that corridor made public so that it can be improved to some degree?
But this is Bruce, so let me add a little bit to that, Kitty. Like, during the public review period for the draft coastal resilience plan, I brought up the subject, and several people at the Madaket Conservation Association brought up the same subject of an alternate route in the event that Madaket Road became unpassable, and the alternate route over Massasoit Bridge also was impassable, because at the time the town had decided not to do the work on Massasoit Bridge, despite the TEC engineering recommendation. So Crack recommended that the alternate route would be Eel Point Road all the way down along the harbor, down to North Cambridge and into Madaket. And when we mentioned that that was a clever concept, except there are portions of that road that fire trucks and ambulances can't pass because of encroachment issues, the road's not wide enough and things like that. Unfortunately, this discussion and this proposed resolution didn't make it into the coastal resilience plan that was approved by the select board. And my thought is that the chapter that we're dealing with, chapter 8, circulation and transportation, the committee members who volunteered for that were Lars, Leslie, Tom, and myself. I think we should try to address that as one subject. Do any of you have any thoughts on that? Because as Kitty mentioned, it's basically a private road, and there are logistical problems there that need to be addressed before we have to really use it as an emergency access. And it goes both ways, coming from town and going to town. So does anyone have any thoughts they want to throw in? I'll jot down and we'll pursue it as we develop chapter 8.
It's a tough one. The only thought I have, I think if I've read the work correctly, the idea is to raise Madaket Road. And I don't know how much that costs, but I think that's the only sensible solution. There's water all over the place. So I don't think, living in Madaket, I don't think Eel Point Road is a viable solution. But I'm not the engineer. I don't know how expensive or realistic it is to raise Madaket Road, and to basically make it look like Key West, where there's a bridge going all the way out to Madaket.
Well, that was an issue that was discussed several years ago when there was the push to bring the sewer out through the area of Raceway Drive and connect it out to Madaket. And when the town investigated the path of getting the sewer and the possibility of it being submerged periodically and then quite often, it caused them to back off. And one of the reasons they want to move the DPW compound is they're afraid of sea level rise and Madaket Road being inaccessible for their vehicles to go out and maintain their functions, you know, like the roads and taking care of the town buildings and things like that. So this is an important subject that I think needs to be addressed, but it's kind of taken a back burner. Matt B is very concerned about it because how are we going to maintain access to the landfill? So there are a lot of issues that play into this, and I wish that that the crack would have addressed this, but I think it's incumbent on us to kind of at least put the ball in play.
I think that'll be a part of chapter 8 for sure.
Thank you. Good. Does anyone else have any suggestions just on this one subject?
Bruce?
Yes.
Hi, sorry, I didn't press the machine to put my hand up. I just put my real hand up. You know, you look at the three alternatives, there's Madaket Road, obviously, and that has been looked at with some detail. Eel Point, and the third, of course, is Barrett Farm Road, Proprietors, and the bridge. I don't know who owns Barrett Farm and Proprietors Way. Are those town roads, or are they owned by the conservation organizations they're running through?
Well, I think they're private roads, Michael, and they're owned by the abutting property owners out to the center of the road. Not
Right.
owned, but the maintenance is
Yeah.
the responsibility of the abutters out to the center of the road. And a good.
So those are all private.
Conservation areas, conservation.
Yeah. Oh, without getting involved in Madaket Road seems, I agree with Lars, just looking at it visually and given the amount of work that's already been done in it, not knowing the ultimate cost, I think there were some estimates in the plan, but in the coastal resilience plan, it seems like the most logical. I think if one were looking for plan B, that the Massasoit Bridge going that route may, though it's not ideal, be more attractive from a cost standpoint and access than Eel Point. But I think I know there was talk about going back a few years, looking at that bridge, the possibility of not only replacing it, but elevating it and elevating the approach from both sides to address the same issues with the rise in water levels. And I think that is certainly worth exploring as well. That may turn out, if again, I think Madaket Road makes the most sense, even if given the expense. It bears so much traffic out to the landfill before you deal with all the crossings. But I think that the bridge should be explored at least conceptually in terms of design and cost as an alternative.
Mike, thanks for those thoughts. And before I make a comment on that, does anyone else want to say anything? Leslie Forbes has a yellow hand up.
I would like to just emphasize the need to pay attention to the yard sale program. One of the cheapest ways to maintain access is to keep Tennessee and Washington open for traffic. And to the extent we've had this problem before, that the planning department has moved fast with yard sale issues, which particularly for Washington Street, because Washington Street comes and goes. It exists in some places and it's a paper road in other places. But if you sell off the paper road to the abutters, you have then closed off an option for alternate access, a pretty cheap option, because when you sell those yard sale things, you know, you're lucky if you get $5,000 from the abutters. So it doesn't, I think that the area plan should point out that we can be penny wise and pound foolish in turning quote unquote non-taxable property into taxable property through the yard sale program, thereby cutting off an existing, a really inexpensive access, alternative access along the Madaket Road.
Well, that's a good point, Leslie. We've had some issues with yard sales where people did basically to increase their ground cover area. And it allowed them to put in some pools or cottages and things of that nature. So it's something to keep an eye on. Maybe we ought to put this in the area plan in some way to maybe have planning department, at least when they're considering these, or what other entities consider them, to pay attention to how the community wants to deal with those too. I see Mr. Topham's hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before I got on the planning board, one of the things I was always hearing Matt V say is, you know, if we sell these, we should have a mechanism within the deed that if the town needs to come back and said, we need these, that they can take back the land. So that is, you know, kind of the mantra that I would be taking to the planning board. I agree with Pat and pushing that item forward. I think it's really important that if this does go forward, then that should be something that is being retained. And I think that that's something that the planning board and the select board should be doing in concert. And, you know, looking at this. And I think that sometimes some of these properties were given prior to really getting a knowledge or what was happening to, you know, sea level rise. And I think now it's kind of important to, you know, what land did the select board give away, and that we all approved and signed off on a town meeting, you know, that we should have said, wait, are we going to need this at a later date? I think Hubbard Ave, same thing. There's a lot of yard sale property that was given away. And I think that there's, you know, we have to go back and kind of look at some of those properties, but moving forward, I think we should protect everyone's rights, you know, to be able to get access out of Madaket in any way, shape, or form. And I do remember Vince Murphy making a presentation when I was on the crack committee that the 4 bridges on Nantucket, 2 on the Pulpus Road, and then the 2 in Madaket was going to cost the town $125 million. So roughly, what, $32 million, say, per bridge. I definitely think that this Madaket bridge number 4 or tag number 4, I think that is really critical to the health and the welfare of the, you know, the head of the pond, and getting that flow and to move and then out to the creek and going by Madaket Marine and out to Smith's Point and, you know, the harbor. I think any flushing we can do and help with that health, because right now that, you know, culvert has got 2 feet of water from the bottom of the bridge. And I was out there a month ago when Kitty gave me a call. We were going to meet for a CPC, and I think it's really important that this gets forward, either whether we need it now for egress, but I also think just for the health of the pond, this should be kind of pushed forward as well as far as Madaket area plan agenda. I think it's really important, you know, just to have this clean and moving and working in a well-functioning, you know, wetland. And I think that's really important. You know, I see Jessie on there, and she may have some insight of that as well, being on, you know, once on the land bank. So I think it's really kind of important to kind of really see it from all different levels, but not, you know, come up short or not see one option. I think we've got to keep them all available to us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you. Any of you folks, any interest in seeing the tech engineering recommendations on the Massasoit Bridge and the Ames Avenue Bridge? If you do, I've got it. It's a lengthy document, but the conclusions are very, very precise. And it makes some valuable points. And I'm curious, though, when Matt Fee was interested in having an option to claw back some paper streets if we needed them, would there be a deed restriction, you think, that tells these folks not to build on it, and there would be a possibility of the clawback? It would be a complicated transaction, I would think.
Well, Sorry, Lars. We'll get back to you in a second. I think that there would maybe just, whether it be a taking, and I think some of the land that is being used is just being used for ground cover, a little bump outs that I'm aware of. So I'm not really aware of people developing on them, and some of it is just could be as much as a setback. So it's really kind of a complicated answer, because each lot would have its own complexity and its own, requirements of, maybe there is nothing in the way and we go. The next one, maybe there is a structure that's close by and maybe it has to be picked up and moved 10 or 15 feet, whatever. I don't really know. I'm kind of spitballing and kind of, reaching for straws. But I think that would be something each lot would have to be looking at it separately.
Well, it's something we need to consider, and perhaps the folks working on chapter 8 will have an opportunity to develop that. So,
Yeah.
Lars,
Come on, go.
your hand is up. Can I call you?
Yeah. Thanks, Bruce.
I'm gonna turn the lights on here.
I've taken a crack at starting chapter 8 anyway, and a couple of additional topics I've come up with. And Mike, I'm curious on your observations on a couple of these things. Of course, we love the wave service out to Madaket. That's a home run, has been for a long time. But there are some safety issues with it down by Millie's. As you know, it parks on the bike path, and I ride my bike back and forth there quite a bit. And there's going to be a problem at some point, because as you're going east to west, you have to make a blind turn around the bus if it's parked there, and you have no idea if a car's coming or not. So we'll make some recommendations on that, but that's you may be well aware of that. But particularly, as you mentioned, later in the day when there's lots of people trying to get down to the beach or park or get takeout food from Millie's, it's a highly congested area. And that leads into another topic, which is just in general Madaket parking, particularly F Street parking. I make the joke that if someone ever left a trailer on Main Street, it wouldn't last 10 minutes. But people can leave trailers all over the place in Madaket, and no one cares. And I'm curious on both those issues, the kind of the Millie's congestion and the way bus and F Street parking. How, the obvious recommendation we'll have is increased enforcement, number one. Last summer, there was a little bit of a pickup in ticketing, but not much. Is that part of what you'd like us to do, is push harder for, at least in the short term, more enforcement? Or do you have an observation on enforcement when people are parking on the bike path and all over the place on F Street and Tennessee Avenue?
I mean, that's probably not something you want to put into an area plan. That's probably something you just pick up and give notification to the police department that you have issues that are existing right there. That's you should probably something like enforce the existing laws that we have. I don't think that should be a recommendation for your area plan, but if that's an issue, absolutely. And if there's a particular roadway that's a problem, and parking is, perhaps there's property that needs to be found for some of the spillover parking and to have it organized better. And I'm not sure where candidate parcels might be where you can have a lot or expand those parking to eliminate those problems, but perhaps that could be something that could be explored as part of the area plan. But as far as the enforcement issue, that's something that we can get on more.
I call a lot, but it doesn't get us very far. There is a parking lot that the land bank has that is completely unused. Leslie, you always know the street. Is that I Street or I forget which street it's at the end of?
Yeah, it's not fresh in my mind right now.
Anyway, it's maybe 300 yards from, or 500 yards from F Street. So that'll be part of the recommendation as well. I'm sure you're aware of it, but they donated it. I think Randy Sharp owned it and sold it to the land bank. And then there's a little pier there and a parking lot that no one ever uses. So there are some options for at least F Street and Tennessee Avenue parking that we'll make recommendations on. But okay, I'm just thank you for your reaction. Those are just some topics we'll highlight, and we'll try to make some decent recommendations on them and see where it goes.
Sure, and if it's all right, Mr. Chair, just on the topic of the NRTA bus stop, I think we've kind of looked at some other alternative locations there. I'll try to dig those up. Those are, that was some time ago that we kind of looked at some other locations, but I hear you about, it's probably not the best thing in the entire world to have a bus stop on top of a bike path. It's constrained in that area, so that's why it's happening right now.
Right.
But if there's other options, I'll try to dig those up and share those with you and see if that's something the group is willing to support, or if nothing else, just make a recommendation of explore this and look at a feasibility of relocating the bus stop. I think that's a fine recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Mike, would you be interested, or would you be willing to review a draft of the circulation chapter once we get it more refined?
Absolutely, I've done that for the town area plan work group.
Thank you. Just, F Street, we get a lot of boat trailers there, and we were able to get a long section of F Street designated for parking with vehicles with boat trailers attached. And they can get about 6 of those in there. We'd like to get the DPW to cut those back about another 4 or 5 feet. So when they do park their trailers there, the trailers aren't hanging halfway off onto F Street. And I've had some pretty good luck calling the police department non-emergency number to send the CSOs over to F Street when non-trailer vehicles are parking there. And the CSOs have been able to enforce that regulation with some pretty hefty tickets. So you kind of got to be proactive. The CSOs aren't really out there to give out tickets, and there's only one cop on the west end patrolling, and he's got other issues to do. So I think that's something we might want to address. Leslie, your hand is up.
It is. I'd like to go to the circulation for the Ames Avenue Bridge.
Well, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
There you go. So on that slide, you have dwellings that are in purple as well as dwellings that are in yellow. And it talks about in some way, some form of retreat, whether it's, it could be something as, I don't want to use the word simple, but I'm going to use the word simple, where you just don't allow additional building and don't require anything of the dwellings that are there. Or there's something more where dwellings need to be retreat under some sort of criteria, which I don't know.
Mhm.
My question is, what's appropriate to put in an area plan? And the first question actually is, what's the timeline on when those purple houses and then the yellow houses would be wet more times than not?
That picture really isn't representative of the current situation out there, but it's a good question, Leslie. The coast is eroding rapidly then.
Yeah, I think that's Vince Murphy's going to be a better person to kind of answer that. I know he's got like different contour lines for different bands of time. The one that sticks out in my mind is 2070 is the year that they everything's going to kind of come to a head, and this is it's a more aggressive strategies beyond this near-term strategy has to be found. So I think it's this 45-50 year time frame is kind of what we have to work with. Now the intersection of Madaket Road and Ames Avenue, that that's something that could probably be threatened in the next couple of few years. And then obviously it progresses on as time goes on. But there probably should be some kind of solution found or recommendation made for just relocating Ames Avenue as well as the homes there. So this probably warrants a bigger discussion.
Joe,
Well, I wonder whether you could get into some, I don't know whether it would be zoning or whatever, about houses in certain dwellings, properties, lots in certain areas having restrictions in terms of density or something other than what it currently is. Would that be, I don't even know where you put it.
If that's a zoning, that'd
Joe
probably
has
be a
an
different
idea.
element.
Pardon me?
If that's a zoning question, you want to downzone some of this to reduce the density, that would probably be one in your land use element, and tied to the resiliency discussion.
And that could go into an area plan?
The recommendation, I would say, probably could be.
That's what I mean,
yeah,
not
yeah.
not a zoning proposal, bylaw, but the recommendation. Okay,
A good question, Leslie. Thank you. I think Joe had his hand up.
Mike, no, Mike answered the question perfectly.
good.
So,
I have two comments on the subject. One is the intersection of Madaket Road and Ames Avenue. You know, several years ago, that was the subject of a big engineering study that was approved by the Concom. And it entailed dumping riprap over it and maintaining the area, and there was dredge sand supposed to come from Pulpus Harbor dredging over to Madaket. And they approved an area in the DPW to store it. And the whole project was turned over to the DPW to try to protect that intersection. And at the time, the DPW director kind of poo-pooed it and just handed over to a couple of workers. And they did whatever they wanted to do. They didn't follow the plan. And the result is it eroded about another 70 feet. And it's something that I think needs to be engineered and studied. And I think the area plan could address this concern. And it also affected, of course, the Madaket Beach, what used to be the public Madaket Beach. The other thing I want to mention is Leslie's comment about the Ames Avenue Bridge on the left side of where the Ames Avenue Bridge connects to Smith Point. At the recent select board meeting, there was a real estate issue in terms of trying to acquire some land at that area. And it's a very complicated issue, and kind of the expert on this, in my view, is Bill Greeter, who's been investigating this. There's been a recent transition of the town's real estate person due to the passing of Ken Bogrand, but this is a hot topic, Leslie, and I think we should address it in the area plan, because it's really the only other alternate. That area is the only way you're going to get into Smith Point, but how you access that point is a critical issue. There was talk of coming in where those yellow houses are and cutting across, but you know, it's very complicated, but we're running out of time for that. And the tech report addresses the Ames Avenue Bridge, and the DPW director, one director ago, he basically quashed that project and that engineering suggestions. He just didn't think it was worth doing. His attitude was, the people who live in Smith Point are, you know, they're seasonal residents, so big deal. And his answer was, they can access it from the beach. And we asked him, how will emergency vehicles get there? And his attitude was, oh, they'll figure it out. So I think it is something that is very concerning. And unfortunately, Tom Erickson, who's the head of the Smith Point Association, I'd like to get him to help input into the circulation chapter. Mike, I have a question about encroachment. We have quite a bit of encroachment onto private and even public roads in Madaket. An awful lot of it is landscape encroachment by property owners. A good example is Goose Cove Ave right across the street from where I live in Madaket Road. It's a 30-foot wide road that's about 9 feet wide because the people have landscaped out to the middle of it. And it makes you know, some folks have been invoked back and forth on the thing, but that's just an example. You know, there's been some encroachment by nature. You know, Michael Maynard is a good example. His mailbox from a number of years ago is now probably 20 feet in the bushes. So what's the town's position on, if you know it, could you help us with this, between natural erosion and planned landscape erosion, encroachment?
Well, if the vegetation is impacting site distances, you know, and affecting the circulation of the roadway, then obviously they cut that back. I think that, you know, if we cut back if the DPW cut back the vegetation to the limit of the layout, I think there'd be, you know, a little bit of an outcry, because, you know, some of these roads are wider than others. Some roads are, you know, frustratingly narrow, the layouts of the road. You can't add bike paths or sidewalk to really do too much with a 30-foot layout. There's other layouts that are much wider than that, you know, and Washington Avenue, I believe, is one of those that has that, you know, a significant amount of width. And if, you know, to cut back or to maintain that full width of the layout, it might create a little bit of outcry. If there's landscaping encroachments or fencing, I think it comes down to just how severe it is. I think that's kind of the approach from DPW and from the real estate specialist who now oversees encroachments. If there's a complaint, kind of do an evaluation of how egregious is this encroachment, and you know, that's especially the case if for some areas where there's growth over like a sidewalk, saying we need that cut back. Or we've had instances where we have a bike path that we want to, you know, construct, and notice that there's vegetation in there, and that's just a letter we send to the abutters. Hey, please move your landscaping out of the public way, because we want to use it for a public good. So that's really the if there's particular areas that you think are of concern, maybe a good exercise is to kind of list those out and have a discussion of, is it egregious or not? Is it acceptable right now or not? Is this going to prevent us, or should we pursue this now because we want some kind of path or sidewalk or some kind of other facility with the layout? So I think that would be something that we need to understand, is one, know where the problem areas are, and then we can kind of compare that with, you know, what kind of facilities do we want to use in the future? And should we get ahead of this now or wait?
Mike, that's a good offer, and I think that some of us might want to take you up on it. It wasn't long ago that the town sent out letters to the folks who live on Washington Avenue that they had to move their hedges, and the boat that was parked out there, and it was quite an outcry, and they decided that maybe that letter shouldn't exist. So that kind of went away. So, you know, you're right about these issues creating an outcry. And across the street from Millie's, there was a paper road that was sold in its entirety to the fellow that was in that triangle lot. And he got the whole road because the butter on the other side didn't want it, but it created a problem with the NERDA bus, wasn't able to turn around anymore there. So I don't know why that issue wasn't brought up at the time, but these are issues that happen out in Madaket, and it's tough to keep your finger on the pulse of these. But I appreciate the fact that you might review these and give us a little advice when we bring them up. It might be helpful.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any issues they'd like to address with Mike? I'm curious about charging stations. What's the town's position on that out in Madaket?
I'd almost ask is there a high demand for that? I'm not sure if, you know, the Millie's parking lot, I'm not sure if that can be a place where you have a charging station, or if there's public parking in that area where it might be an attractive element to have some charging stations within the public parking lot near the beach. There's charging stations at Surfside Beach now. So there might be other candidate locations for public parking areas. So if there's an appetite for that, or if there's a suggestion for where that would need to go, that would be a great thing to include in the area plan. And I'm sure even Lawrence and Nacho would be happy to hear that there's some acceptance or desire to increase the number of these charging stations.
Might be something we could put in a subsequent survey for our residents to see if there's any interest in that. Ladies and gentlemen, does anyone have any further questions for Mike Burns?
I'll raise one more question, and that has to do with the NERDA or WAVE bus. Is there money available for shelters? Not that you'd have a shelter at every pickup stop, but for instance, at Millie's, would it make sense to have a shelter? And is that something that Madaket would have to shoulder the cost for?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, that's not something we can put into the capital budget for, again, I'm speaking for Gary Roberts, but I'm sure Gary Roberts would be willing to put something like that into his capital budget. There's also state grants for improving accessibility and accommodations at bus stops. So we could take advantage of some state funding for this as well. Again, if there's particular locations that you have in mind, Millie's would be one. North Cambridge might be another location that might be a popular stop. I'd almost want to ask Gary for, some pickup and drop off numbers to see, just how well used some of the stops are along the route. I'm sure some of them, like, I see there's a stop at Columbus Avenue. I'm not sure how busy that one is. But South Cambridge and the North Cambridge intersection, that might be a location that's very popular. There might be right of way available to put the stop there and not have those.
So, and throwing into that would also be benches. There are some benches, and not every stop needs a bench.
Yeah, that was one of Bill Greeter's problems. And he's been working on that. He got some benches put in, but I think you're right. They didn't hit all of the places yet.
You don't need them everywhere, just some. Okay.
Hey, along those lines, Mike, just one last question. Sorry, and this probably is something I could have read somewhere, but I love the idea of the electric buses. Is that the idea to, turn the whole fleet over to electric buses at some point, or is that TBD?
Slowly, I think the idea is to phase in an electrification of the system. Obviously, if you made the entire fleet electric in 1 year, then 10 years from now, you got to replace them all at the same time. So they're doing a staggered replacement of vehicles with electric. So yeah, that is the until it's not. Right now, it's the priority to electrify the system.
Thank you.
Part of that issue is they didn't really have trained mechanics to only maintain the electric buses. So that's an issue of getting the right mechanics in there too.
Sure.
I think we're slowly working on it, but that's a good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on our hour deadline of our meeting before we get kicked off. So I just thank Mike Burns for this presentation. I'm sure it went on a little longer than you anticipated, but we have a lot of questions and a lot of help, and I appreciate your offer to take a look at our chapter and some other ideas we might have and get back to us. That's very, very helpful, I think. We didn't get to a couple of the agenda items, chapters that Peter and David have been working on, but I urge you all to please go on the Google Drive and take a look at, Peter's put a lot of hard work in his chapter, and it would be good to get him a little feedback. And it's not something you should feel like you might offend him or anything like that. I think he would appreciate it. And unfortunately, David Madaket couldn't be here, but he's been working on 2 chapters for us. The services and facilities chapter and economic development. So anything you could help him with there, that would be greatly appreciated.
Bruce,
Yeah.
can I just quickly on the chapters that are up, kind of ready to be looked at? There are only a couple of issues remaining in the chapter 5. And I just don't know where to go with this. The only reason they're still there is because I just have no idea which way to go with them. It may be that we're almost at the end of the road, and Bruce, you and I can probably wrap some of those up if we want to start closing up some of these chapters, but certainly would be great if others could take a look at it.
Yeah, I would really appreciate it, even if you just take a quick read of it. And I know sometimes it's hard to get used to using the Google Drive, but once you figure it out, it's not that bad. You know, any kind of new adventure with this computers to me is a pain in the ass, but once I figured it out, it was very helpful. But so I urge you to help us with that. What else is on my agenda here? Is there any new business for us to consider? Anyone?
I see that Jesse Bell has joined us. Nice to see you, Jesse, and your doggy.
Jesse has a new puppy.
I
Yeah.
guess so. So as the minute taker, I am to record such things, and I don't know what capacity you're here in, so.
Right, so
Help me with that.
I wasn't sure if I was still supposed to be coming to these committee meetings or not, since I'm not at the land bank anymore, but I'm happy to if you need. I don't know if the land bank has appointed someone else.
They have not. When I spoke to Neil Patterson about it a couple of times, and I you know, it's not at the top of his things to do list. And the thought was Jesse was representing the land bank on the committee because the land bank has property out here and they're interested in that. So my suggestion was that while Jesse has left the land bank, that until they appoint someone, I asked her to stay on because she's kind of got a link to these areas. And so she's just an ad hoc member. She was appointed way before I had to take over the committee and before some of you people jumped on the committee. So Leslie, I would just call her an ad hoc member.
Thank you. And welcome. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you guys.
What?
Leslie, yep, hold on, just Leslie, she arrived at 4:11 and Kitty arrived at 4:13. Just FYI.
Thank you.
What's your
That's
dog?
good to know.
Jesse, what's the dog's name?
She doesn't know her name yet, but her name is Luna.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can put her down as a member.
Put her in the minutes. She was in attendance. I just had a factual question. I think it was Lars said that Sharp parking lot is never full, or is it like pretty empty all the time?
100% of the time.
Even
Yeah.
in the summer?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Someone had told me that it was like so busy that we couldn't have a I think Mary from the thrift store was looking to have a drop-off pickup once a week at like 8 o'clock in the morning there, and someone said that it was so busy, that parking lot, that it couldn't accommodate that 1 hour drop-off pickup of thrift store.
I'd love your help on figuring out what we can do with that parking lot, but no, I mean, it's been there for at least 10 years and it's never been full. I mean, if there's one car or one trailer parked there, that's unusual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there have been days when there are boat trailers there temporarily, just because they end up putting,
Very occasional.
yeah.
I would expect whoever said that was confused and thought it was a different area than the one it is, because it is empty.
Okay. Yeah, I figured you guys would know. You live out
Yeah.
there, so
It's perfectly maintained. It's a wonderful looking parking lot.
Yeah.
yeah.
We need to figure out how to get trailers off of F Street into there, but
Well,
that's
perhaps
another discussion.
maybe we ought to bring that up to MCA and they could discuss that with the land bank. They meet periodically right across from the Brotherhood. And I've been there a couple of times, but I think that would be something that we could mention during their next meeting during the public comment section. So I would let's see if somebody could go. I'm leaving soon, so I don't know if I could do that. But thanks for that idea, and thank you for joining us, Jeff. Appreciate it. So there's no new business really. The next meeting is calendared for Friday, December 13th. And I would hope you could all attend and take a look at what Peter's written so far, and David. I guess I would entertain an adjournment motion at this time.
So move.
Michael, okay, second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Let's go down the list of attendees. A yes or no. Lars?
Yes, adjourn.
Okay, Leslie?
Yes, adjourn.
Michael?
Yes.
Bruce, yes. Peter?
Yes.
Mr. Topham?
Yes,
Yes?
Yes.
yes, yes, adjourn.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for attending, and I congratulate Mr. Topham for figuring out how to become the host here and for doing a great job, considering the last two meetings we had where everything was screwed up. So,
We're up back
Mike,
on
we're
track,
good to
Bruce.
go.
Onward and upward.
Mike,
Going
once
forward.
again, thank you so much.
Thank you all, and thank you all for what you do.
Thank
I know
you.
this is a volunteer effort on your part, so thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a good
Good night,
weekend.
everyone.
A great
Have a
weekend.
good week, everyone.
Hi,
Bye.
everyone.
No,